Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I will recap one of the thriller films from 2018, titled Matriarch. Before we get to the storyline, don't forget to like and subscribe for more film recaps and have a great day. The film begins by showing a husband and wife who are on their way to some place. The pregnant wife named Rachel, and her husband is Matt. Their journey appears to be smooth and pleasant, until they discover that the road they are about to take in front of them has been closed. Matt follows the directions of diverted traffic, but he does not focus on the road, and hits a fallen tree in the middle of the road. As a result, their car is damaged, causing them to be stranded at the outskirts of the forest away from the crowds. When Matt tries to contact the tow truck, his cell phone receives absolutely no signal.
No.
Luckily, Matt spots a farm about a half mile away from where they are. They then decide to walk towards the house. While on their way to the farm, they come across a signboard that states that they cannot enter the area because it is privately owned land. However, they have no other choice but to keep walking into the area. After they begin to enter the farm area, they are suddenly approached by a car driven by a man. The man scolds them and asks them to get out of the area. Even though Matt has explained what he and Rachel are going through, the man still refuses, and tells them to leave his property. However, once he finds out that Rachel is heavily pregnant, plus the child is a boy, he changes dramatically and becomes very welcoming to them. This man's name is Bobby, and he informs his wife, Agnes, that they have a couple of visitors. At first, Agnes refuses to invite them to their house. But after Bobby says that Rachel is pregnant and that the baby is a boy, Agnes gets excited and tells Bobby to bring them home. Following that, Matt and Rachel explain that they just want to borrow his cell phone and don't want to bother Bobby. But Bobby is delighted to invite them up to his house, telling them that the storm had damaged the telephone line and that they are waiting for a technician to fix it. They then accept Bobby's invitation and are taken by Bobby to his house. On their way, Rachel sees a girl in a black dress staring at her. When they arrive at Bobby's house, they are greeted by Agnes and her two sons. Their sons named Luke and David. Agnes asks her sons to collect their guest's bag, before escorting them to her room where they will sleep for the night.
No, we'll find your phone tomorrow, don't you worry.
Well, they are very happy and can't believe that they will get such a service, even though their only intention was to borrow a cell phone. But they are unaware that Agnes can hear them talking from outside the room. And then Rachel is shocked when she sees the girl she had seen previously on their way. But when she tells Matt, her husband doesn't see anyone there. After that, Matt and Rachel are invited to a dinner with Agnes and her family. When they're having a dinner, Rachel sees a photo of Agnes and Bobby with the girl she had seen earlier, and she asks who the girl is. Agnes says the girl is her youngest child named Faith, but Faith is not with them for dinner that day. In fact, it turns out that Agnes adopted Faith as well as Luke and David, because they are not blessed with children. According to Agnes, the God has a better plan for her and her family. They are then surprised to see Bobby suddenly becomes enraged with his son.
What about that kind of talk?
After dinner, Matt and Rachel return to their room, and Rachel begins to have suspicions about Agnes' family. This is due to the fact that she hasn't seen Faith with them, coupled with the strange behavior of her family. As a result, Rachel asks Matt to get out of this house in the morning. But they suddenly realize that someone is listening in on their conversation from outside the room. However, no one is outside when Matt checks it. Matt then notices that Rachel is tired, so he takes her to sleep. The following morning, Rachel wakes up to the sound of crying. When Rachel turns around, she finds that Matt is no longer there. And she suddenly sees Faith is crying over her two dead parents. Faith approaches Rachel and begins to tell her name. It turns out that it was just a dream. Rachel awakens and says the girl's real name is Ellie Adams. Rachel explains to Matt that Faith is Ellie Adams, whose Ellie's entire family has gone missing and has been on the news for months. She suspects Agnes' family has something to do with this, and they are responsible for the deaths of Ellie's parents. Therefore, she doesn't want to linger any longer, and asks Matt to get out of there right now. After that, they slowly walk down the stairs, but unfortunately, the house door is locked. Matt then takes the key in the key box, but it accidentally falls to the ground. And after that, Bobby appears from behind. Matt says that he and Rachel will continue their journey on foot. However, Bobby just stands there and doesn't say anything. When they are just about to leave the house, it turns out that Luke and David are already in front of the house and holding a weapon. David then hits Matt, as well as Rachel, who is hit by Bobby, causing them both to pass out. After that, Rachel wakes up with her hands chained, and she asks where Matt is. Agnes says that Matt is in a much better place now. Meanwhile, Luke and David are digging up the ground where Matt is going to be buried. They then take off all of Matt's clothes, including his underwear. When Luke is about to kill the fainted Matt, David instead says to bury Matt alive. Luke then tosses Matt's cigarettes and lighter in his coffin, and says he might need them when he wakes up. Rachel, on the other hand, is in the process of giving birth to her child with the help of Agnes. Not long after, the baby is born, but it turns out that the baby is not a boy but rather a girl. Agnes takes her outside, leaving Rachel, who has been exhausted. Rachel tries to free her tied hands after seeing Agnes leave. As she manages to free her hands, she picks up the hanging cross, and pretends to be normal when Agnes speaks to her.
Food, so we best get cracking with that milk of yours.
Rachel, who is already fed up, then hits Agnes, but unfortunately she can't do much once all of them appear. Rachel is once again restrained with cable ties around her wrists and ankles. At this point, Agnes admits that she killed Faith's parents in the name of God. She claims to have saved her adopted children from the clutches of Satan, where she claims Rachel and other parents have infected by evil culture. After she is gagged, she is then taken to a hay shed. Rachel's breast milk is also forcefully pumped by Agnes. Meanwhile, Matt, who has woken up, tries to use his lighter as a light source. Matt doesn't even know where he is now, and he tries to find out by looking around him. He checks the loose side of the crate and found dirt outside. At this point, Matt realizes that he has been buried alive in a coffin. He tries everything he can to break down the side of the crate in order to get himself out of it. He finally makes it out of there without any clothes on. After that, Matt wanders around aimlessly looking for help, but unfortunately, he finds no one there. He doesn't even know where he is right now. Not long after, he comes across a waterfall where he cleans himself up. He also finds a cloth not far from him, and uses it to cover his body. Rachel, on the other hand, tries to free herself from the chains, but her efforts are in vain. Rachel falls asleep again after her efforts, and someone shows up with food and drink for her. And the person turns out to be Faith, or Ellie Adams as she was previously known. Rachel asks Ellie to help her and find something to free her, but Ellie simply walks away and leaves her. The scene then switches to Matt, who tries his best to find the highway, and he finally comes across two men who are camping. Matt tries to ask them for help and explains everything about what he and Rachel are going through. But when they look at Matt's clothes, they think Matt is drunk and hallucinating. It eventually comes down to Matt having no choice, but to engage the two of them in a fight. After that, Matt takes their clothes and offers a win-win solution. Matt tells them to show him the way to the highway, and he gives them a knife to untie them. Meanwhile, Luke and David comes to see Agnes in Rachel's baby room. They know that Agnes is actually hoping for a boy, and offer her a solution in which Luke and David will have sex with Rachel. From that deed, Rachel will give birth to a boy, which is most likely God's plan for them. Agnes can't believe of what she has just heard, and chases them out of the room. Luke and David, who have never experienced such a thing before, finally decide to meet Rachel in the hay shed. As soon as Matt is able to return to the house, he is helped by Ellie to find Rachel's whereabouts. At the same time, Luke and David try to force Rachel into doing what he wants. Luckily, Matt arrives at the right time and beats them both to death with a pipe. Rachel is relieved to see that Matt is still alive. She informs him that their child has been born and that the child is a girl. Matt is happy after hearing this, and he uses his pipe to break Rachel's iron chains. Agnes, on the other hand, hears a knock from Matt's iron pipe, and Bobby checks it out immediately. We can see that Ellie is trying to attract Agnes' attention by smashing the glass there. When Rachel and Matt want to get out of the hay shed, they find that Bobby is already outside while holding his gun. Matt immediately covers Rachel, and lets himself to be shot to death. Bobby then hits Rachel with his rifle, causing her to pass out. After that, Rachel is again tied up in the same place. When Rachel has regained consciousness, she sees Ellie attempting to free herself from the chains. She notices that Ellie has also been chained up along with her. While at home, Bobby sees that Agnes applying makeup to Luke and David. Agnes, who thinks that Luke and David are still alive, is advised by Bobby to let Luke and David go. They eventually bury Luke and David in the meadow, where there are 3 tomb crosses there. After mourning their deaths, Bobby tells Agnes to go home. But Agnes, who still can't let them go, tells Bobby to go home first. Meanwhile, Ellie and Rachel have finally managed to dismantle the bricks that are connected to the chains. They let go of the chains around their necks and hands, before going to Bobby and Agnes's house to pick up her baby. After she found her room, Rachel looks very happy to see her newborn. But not long after, Bobby has returned home. Rachel and Ellie have no other choice but to hide in the closet. After Bobby checks the baby's condition, he goes out of the room and brings the breast pump with him. But when he arrives at the hay shed, he finds out that Rachel is no longer there. So he immediately grabs his gun and returns to the house. However, this time Rachel doesn't want to hide anymore. She asks to let herself give breast milk directly to the baby without pumping. Therefore, Bobby agreed to her request, but it turns out that Rachel is only holding a cloth. She quickly stabs Bobby with a knife to death. After that, Rachel rushes to get Bobby's cell phone and calls the police. Unfortunately, Agnes arrives home at the same time, and she is suspicious when she notices that the key to the hay shed is still in the lock. She then takes the gun and waits for Rachel outside. Not long after, she leaves with the tractor to go somewhere. Rachel and Ellie then slowly comes out of the house with Bobby's gun. They rushes to the car, but they are unable to find the car keys. It turns out that Agnes is monitoring them from afar. Agnes finally walks over to Rachel, forcing Rachel to get off the car with her gun, leaving Ellie with her child for a while. At this point, Rachel and Agnes will engage in a firefight between themselves, but the majority of their shots missing. Rachel, who has been shot in the arms and legs, tries to prevent Agnes from taking her baby. In the end, Rachel manages to defeat Agnes by repeatedly hitting her head on the ground. Rachel and Ellie then leave the house, followed by the arrival of the police and ambulance. The police and doctor try to ask about what has happened to them. But Agnes, who is still alive, comes from behind the ambulance and tries to shoot Rachel. Fortunately, the police are alerted to her presence, and quickly shoot her to death. The police officer inquires about Ellie Adams, who was previously reported by Rachel. And this is the moment where Ellie has just disappeared from there. Before the film ends, Rachel eventually realizes that the girl she had seen in that house earlier was not the real Ellie Adam. It turns out that her efforts to escape from the house were only accompanied by the shadow of the dead Ellie. Furthermore, one of the 3 tomb crosses in the previous scene is turned out for Ellie Adams, who goes by the name of Faith Fairbairn. After that, Rachel and her baby are taken by ambulance to a nearby hospital. And with that, the film ends. Okay guys. That's all the recap for Matriarch 2018. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.